r/AskReddit. Serious. People who discovered someone is going to try or has tried to kill you. What's your story? I had a dangerous ex. He was one of those that was really charming and masterful at deception. He started beating me when I was diagnosed with cancer. I kicked him out shortly after my recovery from cancer, but he had the mindset of if I can't have you, no one can. We shared a daughter, and on his visits he would usually be armed and make offhand comments about mommy disappearing. After a restraining order he began stalking me, having his friends stalk me. I would get random calls from random numbers and he would be the one threatening, or have someone else threaten me. After years of changing my number, moving across multiple states, he found me again. That time I learned he was in the process of becoming a vetted member of a legitimately bad motorcycle club. He said he has been having me followed. I didn't know how he found me as at that time I had no social media presence, but I think he found some members of my family possibly. It was a truly terrifying 7 years of hiding and never trusting anyone, especially family. He died 2 years ago. I cried and cried when I found out. That kind of weight being removed. I still have concerns and paranoia, but it gets better with time. Years after it happened, little things fell into place. My dad was an addict, an alcoholic, and a guy who straight up wasn't ready to be a dad, and I doubt really ever could be. He'd grown up abused. He was a really great guy to start out, sweet, neglected and a troublesome kid in school. He was an artist who worked in a paper mill. At the time of the incidents, I was too little to understand. Around 4 to 5 or maybe 6. I recall several times when things were very off. Things he did recklessly with us that maybe were the result intoxication, but I now can read to be more like his attempts to free himself from a life he didn't want. He would drive recklessly when we were in the car, 100 miles an hour on several occasions, with us unbuckled. I remember being terrified those times, but not understanding exactly what he was doing. Once my sister and I went over with him to his girlfriend's house, while my parents were still divorcing, and he left us to sleep by ourselves on the trampoline. We lived in rural Vermont. I remember that night particularly thinking I was cold and really hungry, and I wanted to go inside, but I didn't know where the house was. The only reason I didn't wander off and get lost in the forest was because I was too tired to get up. I would have most likely died if I had left the trampoline, since there was no one for miles and bobcats in those woods. If I hadn't been killed I might have been lost for days or simply starved to death. But those are examples of him not having the guts to do anything to us, just kind of hoping we'd disappear, I guess. One day though, I'm told, he came home high and took out his gun and told my mom he was going to kill us and himself. It wasn't the only time that happened. I don't know how she talked him down, but I remember her telling me the story for the first time and the heartbreak in her eyes when she said we were just playing in the next room. I felt guilty for years and still do almost 15 years after it happened, thinking that I didn't do anything. Although I couldn't have, could I? I was only a little kid, and somehow I didn't die. It scares me to think about seeing him again. Last time I saw him, I was 9 or 10. He is remarried with 2 kids now and apparently couldn't be happier. I wonder if they'll ever know what he tried to do. My brother has been an asshole to me all my life, but a year ago in January he tried to blow up the house and seemingly targeted me by turning the kitchen stove's gas on and starting a fire outside my room. He tried this twice. I couldn't get my parents to do anything about it, and they lied to the police about it when they arrived. I had started suffering from massive blood clots in my lungs which had almost killed me a few months prior, and I knew that if I stayed there I was going to end up dead from that or my brother. I left and became homeless for almost a year and tried my best to manage my clotting disorder living on the street and in shelters. Finally in October some of my extended family got in touch with me, and I've been staying with them trying to pick up the pieces of my life and build a future for myself. All that's happened has left with me with scarred lungs, a damaged heart and a lot of depression and hopelessness. I'm trying to hold out hope that my life will get better in time and that if I continue going through the motions, eventually I'll actually want to survive. I currently have no intention of ever speaking to my parents or brother again. Sorry for the wall of text. I don't much want to edit it to format it better. My brother used to have a lot of drug and anger problems. He's tried to kill my mother on more than one occasion. Literally waited around the corner of the house with a knife once. Anyways, he's even had psych evils and passed. My dad made it clear he cannot get away with trying to kill our mom. Sounds so trivial, but it just moved onto me. Then he would try to kill me. He'd try to break through my door, come in through my window, waited for me in the hallways of our home. Once he was bashing my head against the toilet. Thankfully I butt dialed my dad, whom heard, and called the police. For whatever sick and twisted reason my father took it seriously when he was making murder attempts with my mother, but when it turned to me, he chose to act as if I was being dramatic. I kept trying to stand up for myself and make my dad see that what was happening was wrong and he should have stood up for me more, like he did with my mom. But he is his son. Blah blah blah. Always sticks up for his son. Anyways, I ended up getting kicked out of the house, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. It's so nice not to have to hide in my room afraid to leave while my parents aren't home, because I'm receiving death threats being slid under my door and getting attacked in the hallways. I mean, it was really bad. I'd use a ladder to go in and out of my room. Sometimes I'd have to use the ladder to go outside in the yard to pee because I couldn't use the house. It was bad. It's nice to hear a footstep outside of my door and not be fearful. Although I still actually have PTSD from it. I've long lived away from home. Backstory: my uncle and aunt have been married for several years and have 3 kids. My uncle is a Sikh guy from India and my aunt is Fijian Canadian. They both live in Canada. My aunt is my mum's sister and my mum is the oldest child. This is relevant for later on. My great aunt threw herself a 60th birthday party at a fancy house and invited all of her friends and family, as one does, including my family and my aunt's family. My uncle starts fighting with my parents because he's mad that my grandfather didn't give a dowry to him for marrying my aunt. However, my grandfather has been dead since 2002 and died when my aunt was about 13, which is well before my aunt and uncle even met. We point this out and then gets mad that my parents didn't provide a monetary dowry to him and that we owe him money. He gets even more mad when my dad points out that he was fine with marrying my aunt without a dowry back then, so he should complain then. They leave and we think it's finished. My uncle keeps harassing us and sending threatening phone calls, including to me, and threatens to rape and kill me. The only reason he didn't try to kill me is because we called the cops on him and he didn't want to go to prison. I haven't talked to him in almost 3 years and it's for the best. My aunt is still with him, even though she knows what he wanted to do to me. That's the story of the 3rd time a relative wanted to kill me. I had an uncle with apparent mental health issues that went undiagnosed. Family scapegoat. Whole family was dysfunctional, and he was always homeless, hitchhiking, or living in a shitty house or dirty trailer on drugs. The dude was brilliant when he was sober, but had the rotten luck of being born into a shitty family in the inner city. He was also my favorite uncle for that reason, and whenever he would come over hungover we would watch documentaries and stuff together. Anyway, like with most of these characters, he loved war documentaries and guns. Somehow he had a whole arsenal of semi-automatics. I've posted on Reddit before detailing how, when I was a kid, we would come over to his house when he called, load up his drunk and or high ass into the car, clean up his house, which was filled with drug paraphernalia and alcohol, and have him dead exit our house for a few weeks. One time he was delusional or psychotic, was watching WW2 documentaries and thought I was an artsy. He pointed an AK-47 at my head, hesitated, and then yelled at me when he realized it was me. He then handed the gun to my mother to unload. He then gave all the guns away to other uncles/family members that had permits and such. Well, about 5 years later he died of massive heart attack which I assume was drug related. His mom, my grandma, was shockingly solemn and calm about it. She had been preparing for that day for years. After the funeral, she pulled me aside and informed me that she felt better because she didn't have to worry about him anymore and that he was born with something wrong with him. She then told me that when I was in high school he threatened to kill me and his children and grandchildren on a number of occasions because we were innocent and shouldn't see what he was going to do, which in context meant he was going to just slaughter the entire family. His mom was probably mildly intellectually disabled and a chronic enabler and was convinced that if he tried anything she could fight him off with some weapon, like a kitchen knife she had around the house. Later she asked one of her kids for a small handgun, which they loaned her, and she kept stored in the basement wardrobe. She never filed a police report, or had us move out of the house, had him held for a psych eval, or told us we were in danger. This was after I went to his house before or sometime around the funeral to clean up again, and found a different pile of guns, bullets, magazines, and weapons. As soon as I was able, I ended up getting a therapist and she diagnosed me with PTSD from childhood. Wow, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching, mate. Smash that like button and subscribe for more daily content.